Hey, welcome to the WTF Podcast. My name is Molly Smith, and I am on a mission to equip 1 million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk, and more importantly, how to pivot out of it. By tuning in today, you've joined me on this mission. I'm so grateful that you are here. You know that moment when everything looks right, but something inside you whispers, this isn't it. Today's guest knows that feeling all too well. Carah is grounded, soulful, and not afraid to burn the rule book in pursuit of alignment. She's my kind of people, I'm just going to tell you. Her story is one of courage, conviction, and a pivot that required her to let go of something that she spent years building. If you've ever felt that nudge that something bigger is calling, even when life looks perfectly fine on paper, this conversation is going to hit deep. Please join me in welcoming Carah Elizabeth to the WTF podcast. Hey, Carah.
Hi, thank you so much, Molly. It's such an honor to be here and share my story with your
I,
audience.
I love it. I love it. And your story is, I love your story. And the pivot is amazing. So let's dive in. Give us a little bit of your background.
Yes, absolutely. So I am a clinically trained psychotherapist who spent 20 years in the traditional mental health field, moving from the ground up, from, mental health technician to building a private group practice that had 4 therapists under me that we made, multiple 6 figures and had 6 month waiting list. And I got there and that was my goal my whole life, the whole career, since I chose the schooling and everything like that. And then I got there and I was like, wait, this doesn't fit anymore. This doesn't feel good. Like everything looked good on paper. By all intents and purposes, I was successful. And I'm like, but I just don't feel it anymore. And
Oh,
that's when I decided to pivot.
okay. So tell me about when you had that whisper, like, something's not right here. So tell me about that.
Yes, I just began to be open and aware to other opportunities around me. When you're training for therapy, when you're training to become a psychotherapist, it is like you have blinders on. Like, this is the only way you can help people. And you're actually trained that way. And you're trained in so much fear that you can't do anything outside of the bounds of regulations and rules, or you'll lose your license and then you'll end up not having a career and you'll end up in a cardboard box on the side of the road. Like, it literally is like that dramatic love
Wow.
and training. Exactly. That's where your head goes because they train you in so much fear. And when I started to open my eyes to that fear, because I had been doing the layers and layers of my own work, I was like, oh, I chose a career path that mimicked how I was raised. And I was raised in a very fear-based environment. I was raised in a very religious household. And I was like, oh, this is mimicking my own trauma. And that's when I really started to do deeper work and realize I have to step outside of the norm, outside of what's familiar to me, and do something different.
Wow. Okay. Now in 2019, didn't you attend an event?
I did.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that.
I attended a women's empowerment event and I'd gone a couple years before then as well. And I had a friend of mine was on stage speaking. And as we walked out of the event, she's like, how did it go? What happened? I was like, you know what? I just realized while you were on stage that I need to close my practice. And we both stopped and I like couldn't even imagine the words were coming out of my mouth. And she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I need to do something different. And so 2019 is the year I decided that in August. And I did work through 2020. But at the beginning of 2020, I told all of my clients and the therapists under me, even before the pandemic happened, that this would be my last year as a licensed therapist. I wanted to work with them because I had clients that were, or I had therapists that were working on their independent licensure hours. So I wanted to finish those up for them. And then I was like, but we're going to close at the end of 2020.
Wow. Okay. So what fears came up for you when you realized that you were about to walk away from something that you had spent your entire adult life building?
Every fear came up and actually every fear was validated. Like I went from having a 6 month waiting list, had referral sources left and right. I had a reputation in the industry because I was a specialized in eating disorders and trauma. And so I had those contacts made and I lost them in a day. The second I decided to no longer, like I stopped getting referrals, most of my colleagues stopped even speaking to me because it was almost like, you're not in this anymore. Like we have no use to actually speak to you. So you really realized who was a colleague and who was a friend. And there
Oh
was
my
a
God.
very clear delineation of that.
So we're talking other therapists in your practice that you built were like, all right, she's doing something else or she's going to do something else. That's
I actually, yeah,
feel. How did that
it,
feel?
it was heartbreaking. I actually have no contact, not because I have no contact. Once I closed the practice, those three other therapists, and once they got their paperwork submitted, I've heard nothing from them since. Like, and it is heartbreaking because I was there for them. I was there for them personally. I was there for professionally. It was heartbreaking to release that. And it was also like, okay, well, now I know. Now I understand
The
what
law
this
of
relationship.
contrast, the law of contrast at
It,
hand, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And here's the thing: with every contraction, there's an equally abundant expansion that happens. And so I had to have that contraction to receive the expansion that I was moving towards. And
Yes.
it's really important that we all understand that is like when we're feeling that ick, when we're feeling that funk, when we're feeling that contraction, know that it's because you're on the cusp of something greater and your body and your and energy needs to release that contraction before it can expand.
Yes, girl. Oof. Yes. Okay. Now looking back, I mean, here, so this is like 2020. So we're 5 years out from this.
Mhm.
Looking back, were there any hits or red flags that any kind of discontent with what you were doing, like pre 2019? Like, can you look back and say, oh, this was a sign or this was a flag? Like now you can see it. But so share with us a couple of those that became more clear after you made that decision.
Yes, 100% there were, because of course there are. And hindsight is always 2020. So it even happened before 2019, before I was even in private practice, before I even had my independent licensure. There were these road signs. So I ended up having to do, as a therapist, we have to do 2 years, 3,200 hours of supervised work experience to get our independent licensure. I had to do it twice because the first time I got denied because my supervisor's paperwork was out of compliance. And so I had to redo 2 years of work because my supervisor wasn't in compliant with her documentation. So none of
So
my hours were valid.
So you did 6,400 hours versus the 3,200 hours because of a clerical issue?
Yes, yes. And that was in looking back, I can see, okay, that was a sign. I was pushing forward because I had blinders on that this was the only way to do this work. And that's the fear-based training I was in. I was like, this is the only way. And I was really rigid and really resistant to exploring other opportunities. That was the universe saying, hey, there might be another way. But I didn't take it, which made it that much more difficult because that's what happens.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And you went on to get the independent licensure and then build a practice, bring in therapists, supervise therapists who are working on theirs as well. Wow. Okay. What did you do? So you pivoted out of your practice into coaching, right? So how did you shift and what is it that you do?
So it actually started in January of 2020. I attended another event and it was a week-long event. And somebody at that event said, I need to work with you. And that was the first client I took as a coaching client. And we worked together and I had built this program that I had been building in the background. And it was beautiful. And her transformation was beautiful. And her ability to release trauma in the way that I was able to incorporate all of my skill set, not just my clinical training, but my energy work, my yoga, my somatic training. I was able to incorporate it and it was beautiful. And that started in January of 2020. And I really didn't stop since then. Even through 2020, I accepted more clients that were coaching clients that were not in the state that I was living in. And so it really was a pretty easeful transition
Okay.
for that aspect. However, the learning to self-market is still challenging at times because as a therapist, I didn't need to do that. I just had people calling me for their needs.
Yeah. Okay, so
So what I do,
that's definitely a different thing that you've got to pick up and learn and so forth. So when you look at your practice, your coaching business and your coaching practice now, what does that feel like?
it feels aligned. It feels so good because I'm using all of my skill set where I
Yeah.
couldn't do that as a therapist. I couldn't bring energy work into therapy. I couldn't really bring somatics at times into therapy the way because and things have changed in the therapeutic world now. There is a lot of incorporation now that there wasn't before 2020 happened. Let's be really
Sure.
clear. We couldn't do things virtually back then. Now they can. So it's very different environment, but it feels so good to be able to holistically meet my clients' needs, bringing in
Absolutely.
the energy work, bringing in the body work, bringing in the psychotherapy, and just merging it together in this beautiful transformation experience for
Wow,
them.
that's amazing. Okay, tell us about your license
My
and
clinical license.
let's share that story because that is a real interesting one. And I think that it's again just another proof point that okay, like I'm on the right path. I'm doing what I need to be doing. But share with our audience a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So in the state of Arizona, that's the only state I can really speak to because that's where my license was held. In the state of Arizona, we always had this joke as a therapist that you never release your license. Like you will never get it back if you release it. You never release your license. So in 2021, I put my license on inactive status. And that gave me 2 years. But again, in the state of Arizona, you weren't permitted to keep it on inactive status like other states allow you to. So I had to decide I was either going to reactivate it or I was going to just completely release it. And I chose the latter. I chose to completely release my license, which means, again, I cannot practice psychotherapy in the state of Arizona anymore.
Right.
But it's a mute point because now I have clients all over the world that I can see because I'm not just tied to a licensure in the state of Arizona.
That's right. What did the act of letting that go? Because you put it on hold or you put it in inactive, and then you were forced to say, either I'm going to reactivate, which you weren't going to do, or to let it go. What did that act symbolize for you?
Freedom,
Mhm.
liberation from the restrictions of the state, of the limitations to the licensure, the limitations to the location I could help people or how I could help people. It really symbolized releasing that fear based training and having freedom to do and support my clients in the way that I felt so needed to happen.
Do you feel like your clients get I mean, you're not obviously not a licensed psychotherapist anymore, but because you can bring so many different modalities plus your the knowledge that you have, do you feel like you can come around your clients in a more holistic way?
Absolutely. And I think there's so much more integrity and there's so much more credibility because I have the training. I can never, nobody ever, just because I don't have my license anymore doesn't mean I've lost the knowledge and the experience
Of
and the
course,
education that I have.
right?
And that's, I think, what is really important for a lot of people is to understand that there's a depth to the work that I do with people that doesn't happen with people who don't have that experience, don't have that length of time or that training. And so I think there is just a depth to that, as well as, a breadth of knowledge and modalities, like you said.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So looking back at the traditional psychotherapy business and then what you're doing today, what is your favorite or most impactful modality that you couldn't use before that you use all the time now that you see your clients winning with?
I love this question. It's so perfect. So I like to use the blueprint of the body, which for me, it's the chakra system, it's the energy system. If you don't like that word, that's okay. To allow our brain to let us get into the body. So what happens with trauma is we get disconnected. And so
Yes.
psychotherapy is all about the brain. Psychotherapy is all about, the mindset. It is coming into the body a little bit now, but this is new. So what bringing in the chakra system or the energy system does is I can give my clients some information to acquiescence the brain and allow the brain to say, oh, okay, we can drop in the body. And so then we move through the chakra system, peeling back the layers. Each chakra has a wound and a gift. So we can move into
Yes.
those areas, release the trauma that's stored in those parts in the bodies, and move our way up to full liberation from that experience.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love energetics. I geek out on it all the time. It is such I don't think people pay attention to it enough or a lot of people don't pay attention, right? And so but
Mhm.
it is so impactful when you can calibrate your energy and you can drop into the body and get centered and grounded in the breath and just tune in. Oh my gosh, thank you.
Absolutely. And trauma is such a soul wound. It's not even a body or a mind wound. And so until we can drop into the soul this way, we really can't get to the depth of those wounds to really find true release and healing.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so if we have a listener who might be a psychotherapist or in some type of profession that required a lot of licensing and they feel that whisper, there's a little bit of that discontent, like, this isn't it. but they don't know what to do next, what's the first step that they could take into tuning into that inner knowing?
The first step is to release the belief that just because you may not be doing what you were trained to do doesn't mean that all of that training goes away. Doesn't release the credibility. Like to stand firm in the credibility of your training, of your experience, and know that that will go with you wherever you go. It's not tied to a really expensive piece of paper that you hang on the wall of your office.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
We put so much pressure on ourselves and we put so much emphasis on that degree or that license, and it's not that you didn't earn it, and it's not that it's not valid, that it is valid, it is important, but it's not everything. It's not who you are. Who you are is inside of you. It's not on this piece of paper. It doesn't matter about the office or whatever that looks like, and having that belief in yourself is so important.
Makes all the difference in the world. Our identity is not in what we do for a living.
Right.
Oh, I
That's what
love this, Carah. I love it. I love it. Well, friends, if this episode resonated with you, or you know somebody who might be a psychotherapist or in a field that required a whole lot of study and practice in order to work, that may be feeling a little bit like, I'm not sure if this is it, please, please, please forward this episode to them. As you can see by Carah's story, like, what she's doing right now is absolutely changing people's lives around the world, not just in the state of Arizona, right? Because she listened to that inner knowing. So please share this episode in helping me also reach the million people and helping equip them to pivot out of the funk. Thanks. We'll see you next time, everyone.